Hello again, and now we're going to do knit 3 ways plus how to do a gel polish snowflake. So we're going to start with 2 colour coats of nude. So we're going to do that middle nail there first. So we're going to start with 2 coats of any nude polish you like. I'm going down the purpley tones on this one. We're going to do 2 colours and a matte and cure them. And then we're going to use a dotting tool to make as equal as we can row of dots down the middle of the nail, and then we're going to do dots either side. We're going to make squares out of these dots. We're going to do lines of dots that are equal and symmetrical, and this is going to help us. It's only gel polish and it will blend in with the gel polish that you're putting down on the nail, and on these grid lines you're going to be painting dark gel polish at the end anyway, so make sure you've got them nice and square. Yeah. And I'm going to start on one of the dots with drawing a triangle, and I'm going to join it up with the other 2 dots either side to make a zigzag. So this is my first port of call. So I'm making a zigzag there across the nail with my first choice of gel polish. So I've chosen a lovely mauvey lilac here. I've chosen mauves, rose golds and nudes for this. So I'm just going to draw a line across, and I'm going to make another line from the centre of that underneath. I'm going to do triangles underneath, so it kind of interlinks in between, and then I'm going to fill that in, and that will give us our first zigzag. There we go. And then once I've done that and I'm happy, I'm going to cure that in the lamp, just a flash cure for 10 seconds, just so I don't nudge that. And following the bottom points, I'm going to start and draw the zigzag in again, using the gaps in between the dots that I put down to follow the ziggy-zaggy points that I laid on my first. So as long as you get that first zigzag right, the rest of them will follow. Trying my bestest not to overcomplicate it, but I don't think it's working somehow. So I've done that and flash cured it with a sparkler, and I'm going in now with a slightly darker colour. So I'm going to follow that zigzag and follow the points on my previous zigzag as to where the points on my new zigzag will be. Okay, so you can see I'm painting my first one in. That's my first point in. And then I'm just going to follow across. It's almost like long rectangles that go up to the point. So I'm painting long rectangles. Can you see? There you go. To the points that I've made with my gel at the beginning. Follow that on. And I'm going to do that on the entire nail with the 4 colours that I've chosen. So I have chosen 4 colours, and I did start the base with one of those colours, with the lightest of the 4 colours. Okay, I actually chose 5 colours, sorry. So I actually started this with 5 colours, and the lightest is on the base. So then I'm just going to come in now with the second to lightest, and I'm going to now just fill in those rectangles again on the top and the bottom, just so it gives me those different coloured chevrons. It's really therapeutic when you start doing these chevrons. You can just sit for hours and make sure that they're nice and pigmented and not streaky. I'm just going to my base colour this is now, just filling in those little gaps at the top and the bottom. And I'm also going to go over any of the lines that I feel need a little bit more depth of colour, especially this glitter one. Okay, so once that's cured, we're going to matte top coat this and cure again. Okay, so this is one of my favourite matte top coats. It's the Velvet Matte from Naomi. And then I'm just going to pop this, once it's top coated, into the lamp to cure for a minute. And once that's cured, we're ready to go with the colours on top. So I'm using a really long liner brush, and I've got my really dark black here, and what I've done is I've mixed, just popped it onto my palette. So this black is actually gel paint, not gel polish, because I want it to be super pigmented. And I'm going to start by going vertically through all the points that you've made. So using your long liner, so long brush for longer strokes with a light pressure, consistent pressure, we're going to go down between all these points and make vertical lines and join them up. Now the reason why I'm using gel paint is because it's pigmented and it's tack free. So when I cure this at the end, I don't have to wipe over it. So it is tack free. And it also has a really good pigment to it. So it holds its pigment really, really well, which is what obviously we want. We want to hold the pigment really well. So I'm just going to continue with these vertical lines all the way across. And now we're going to do the diagonal pieces. So I'm going to come with a small sweeping curving motion and separate all of these colours in the direction that you've painted them. So just follow it down, and then we're going to swap and do the other side, and we're just going to go over all of these joins now with a sweeping curving diagonal line. So when you come from that centre line, just curve it just slightly. There we go. I'm just going to follow this along all the way. It's a real therapeutic technique. So you can see I'm just joining all those diagonals up that I've already painted and already made, and it just transpires into this lovely knitted pattern. And then once that's all done, we're going to cure it and we're finished. So moving on to the next one now, we're going to do the neck of a jumper. So I'm starting with a lovely mauve. There is a theme here. So I'm going to do 2 coats of mauve and cure between each coat. And then I'm going to use a nude colour, and I'm going to paint a semicircle, so an arch. So if I start from the middle, you can see that I spread the bristles of my brush and I use my brush to paint in that shape. So we're painting in almost a D shape at the top. So this is going to be almost the neckline of the jumper, and that's going to be cured. And I'm just going to give that a second thin coat. There we go. So just to make sure that that colour is fully opaque and not transparent, and cure. So then I'm going to take my matte top coat and I'm going to matte top coat this whole nail, so it's a finished nail, and I'm going to cure that, and then we're going to go on with the design. Okay, so we're going to pop that into the lamp to cure, let it self-level a minute. So on my palette here, I've got my jumper colour, the main background colour, the purpley mauve, and I'm mixing it with a tack-free gel paint. Okay, this is going to form a lighter colour for me to go over with. So this time I'm going for a little bit of contrast on the jumper. So I'm going to start with the neck area and my long brush, and I'm going to paint a semicircle. I'm going to mark a dot in the middle, and then I'm going to come from either side and paint that lovely semicircle onto my jumper. So that's going to be the neckline, and then I'm going to start to paint in the vertical lines. So I'm going to imagine that centre point's there, and I'm going to go either side of that centre point for the first 2 lines. Remember that pressure. Remember, if you want to know how to paint lines, then if you just go to the link above, to the edumats link, you can buy the mats there. So once I've done those 2, I'm then going to do another 2 lines symmetrically, 1 and 2. This is going to form the rib on our jumper. I'm going to start painting some details in here. So I'm going to do 2 lines opposite each other and then join them together into kind of a sideways, a stretched S. So I do 2 vertical lines. The top of the bottom vertical line is in line with the bottom of the top vertical line, if that makes sense. And I'm going to join them together at a diagonal to make the patterns on the sweatshirt. And on this next section, I'm going to reverse that. So I'm going to mirror image. I'm just popping this line back in again. It wasn't particularly straight, so there we go. So I'm just going to reverse here. So I'm going to do exactly the same as I did on the other side, but in reverse. And we're going to follow the same pattern and mirror what we've done over on the other side. It just helps to putting those guidelines in first, just helps to get things nice and symmetrical. So I'm going to continue with this, making sure that you go over any areas that look a little transparent, although it doesn't matter for want of the design because we're going to go over with superfine glitter while it's still wet. So remember, we're not curing this at all at the moment, okay? Because we're using gel paint, it's staying exactly where it's been put. It's not self-leveling. So now I'm going to add a few more details onto here. I'm going to go onto the side and just put some lovely little diagonal lines in. So coming in the opposite direction to what you've done on your previous panel. So everything needs to be opposite to what you've done on the previous panel for it to give you that illusion of a jumper. Some dots. You can't beat a well-placed dot. So some nice dots there. Lovely. And then we're going to do some necklines. So I'm going to just follow that first line I put in with my brush. You can see my long brush, I can curve it a lot easier than a shorter brush. And then I'm going to put in some vertical lines here so it looks like the rib of the neck of a sweater. You could do anything you want. You could even put a necklace on this, but you'll see what I do with this in a minute. So once you're happy with that, we're going to use ultra fine glitter. It has to be ultra fine, sparkly glitter, almost a dust. I've got my little catcher contraption here. Sorry, I go off camera slightly. What I'm doing is I'm sprinkling the super fine glitter with a spatula all over the top of that wet gel. There you go. I've cured it for 2 minutes and I'm going to just dust that off. Yeah, look at that. Sparkles. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Swarovski, of course, to this sweatshirt. It wouldn't be a Christmas sweatshirt without a little bit of bling. Using a little bit of gem glue gel or top coat, whatever you've got. Or builder gel even. Clear builder gel is really good for securing gems. Grab a corresponding Swarovski and pop him on there, right in the middle. I'm just going to flash cure him on. And what I'm going to do is using a couple of silver bullion beads, and I put the beads into top coat on my palette. So I've got a couple of silver bullion beads and I'm just putting them in some top coat that I've got on my palette and rolling them around so that the whole bullion bead gets covered in top coat. And I'm going to use those as 2 little holders either side of the gem. So I'm going to use my brush to pick them up and I'm going to place a single gem. It's covered in top coat because I've rolled them around in that wet top coat on my palette. This is a great way of putting bullion beads on. Obviously don't soak them because they will look messy, so you just need to get enough top coat on there. Put one either side and then I'm going to cure that. On to the final design now, the really dark snowflake jumper. So this is a colour called Mulberry Wine and it's a halo colour. Virtually black when it's on, but it is a real dark currant colour. So I'm putting 2 coats of that on and matte top coating. Okay, when you do this, it literally looks black, but it isn't. It is the darkest of dark purples. So I'm just going to pop a little matte top coat on there because we're going to do that finished nail first. Then the design that we do on the top is by the by. So let's finish that nail off, matte top coat and cure in the lamp. So that's cured and out. So using the gel that we've used on the base, I'm going to use this for the sugared effect. So I'm going to paint in 2 vertical lines. I'm going to split this nail vertically down not quite down the centre, I think it's just kind of off centre. And on this area, I'm going to do a Christmas jumper pattern. And I'm going to start by using my brush to do little leaf shapes. Again, you need to do a little bit of training on how to do fine lines. My edumat will teach you this. So pop your leaf shapes in one way and then we're going to come in the other way with this. It's really difficult to show on camera because it is so dark, but this is the gel polish that I used on the base to paint this design on the top. So they're just like little leaf shapes, very simple, going diagonally. I'm now going to do some chain link. So what you do, if you can see this, is you do a vertical line, diagonal line, then a vertical line, and repeat that vertical line, vertical line, and repeat vertical, diagonal, vertical, and it forms a chain, like a chain looking pattern on the nail. Just popped a little long line in there, and then I'm going to sprinkle this with clear acrylic powder and I'm going to cure in the lamp. So I'm going to now pop some clear acrylic powder on this. I've not got my little contraption this time. So I'm just going to do it straight over the pot because it's going back in. So I'm going to use a spatula. You can see that pattern now. You've got to make sure that it's soaked and that the acrylic powder soaks right into that gel. Otherwise it's just going to be a shiny line and we don't want that. We want it to be non-sticky, full of acrylic powder, so there's no live product once it's cured. And we're going to pop that in the lamp to cure. Once it's out, we're going to give it a brush. There you go. And it then changes the colour of that, so it gives it a texture. So now you can see the pattern once you've brushed off that excess. So we're going to add some little snowflakes now. And what I'm using for this is I'm using some white gel paint, tack free, so we don't have to wipe it off. I'm just going to start with a little dot in the middle of the nail. I've made a little booby there, but it doesn't matter because we're going to go through it. And round it, I'm going to put 6 dots, 5 dots around it. And then I'm going to put smaller dots at the end of these. So lighter pressure with your needle, with your dotting tool. So we're forming a star already, kind of a star shape. And this is how to get a symmetrical star. Now I'm not going to put any extra paint on my brush now. I'm just going to take my clean brush and I'm going to use the paint that's there. And I'm going to drag out from that centre dot and I'm going to drag out to the end of my little dots. So they go down in sizes. We start with a large dot, then we've got a medium dot, then we've got a small dot. And I'm just going to drag that product that is already there, so no extra product, very gently, the lightest of light pressure through each of these points to form the 5 points of the star. This is probably one of my favourite ways to do stars, to be fair. Oh, it's so sweet. And I'm just going to put a small amount of paint on the top of my brush, and then I'm going to do 2 small lines either side of each of these prongs at the top, between the top 2 dots. So I'm just going to do a little sideways prong. I'm literally just laying the top of my brush on there. I'm not trying to paint, I'm just using the top of my brush loaded with paint to make that mark. And it builds up into this beautiful little snowflake. And the final one, like that. So I'm going to do a half snowflake at the top. I am going to add some more detail to that bottom one, but I'm just going to do a half snowflake at the top. So I'll start my centre point on that line and come out with my prongs. So I'm going to do 3, always an odd number for me, remember. I do like an odd number, and I'm just going to drag from that centre point out. Very, very lightly. It's the lightest of delicate touches with the very tip of that, very, very tip of that brush. I'm just following the same pattern as I did below. So it looks like we've got one peeping out from behind that knit pattern, which is beautiful. There we go. I'm just going to add a few more in between. I'm just going to use the brush paint that I've got on my brush. I'm just going to add 2 little spikes to that one, and I'm going to add a little spike, drawing from the paint that we've already got on that centre point. Don't need any more paint. I'm going to drag out so it fills in those centre gaps, and you've got beautiful looking snowflakes there. They look so cute. And in between that, I'm going to use my dotting tool just to put some small, tiny dotty snowflakes in between, just to fill that area out a little bit. And then that's going to go into our lamp to cure. I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial. Subscribe for more and tag me in your work. See you soon.